Hello, OG members of the Patreon. Thank you for joining me in another private segment that I'm going to be giving you guys today. I would expect this one to be probably one of the most important private segments of the week. And depending on how much you trust the fighting guru and how much you are capable of going in on this, because do you remember, you have to take this for what more important than my predictions, more important than my predictions. It's okay. More important than my predictions and more important than my breakdowns is my betting tips. When I can tell you guys, like this happened a few weeks ago, and a lot of my patrons thanked me. They said, "Hey, thank you for telling me that this is going to be a bad card to save your money for the 20th." Because on the 16th, the Dusko card, I told you was a crap card. The Parisian card, before I told you this is a fades versus fades. They want to find out who's going to get their walking papers, so be careful. These guys are not trustworthy. For Bellator, I say this. LFA, I've said this. But now when I tell you, like the Khabib cards, right, there's a reason why I did 3 different, not only, there are some weeks where I will not even do a 6-leg parlay, or I'll do no more than a 6-leg parlay, right? But then did you notice that there were some weeks I did a 12-leg parlay and I did it 3 times. The same combination. I didn't even take one guy out. I put the same exact 12 people in it, but I repeated the bet 3 times. It's not a coincidence that happened to be the same week where I hit the 12-leg combination. Well, this week, let me tell you a couple of the things that I do different. Now, this is a part we can speak freely, okay? One of the things, you will never hear the fighting guru say, "I'm going to pick John Doe to win the fight because the line is too wide." The day that I start picking fights because of the line being too wide or some weird stuff like that, if I cannot tell you, hey, this guy's kicking this way, he's going to punch that way, this guy's going to block this way, he's the better power striker, he's the better grappler, if I cannot dissect and live up to my name, the fighting, not the line guru, the odds guru. If I can't live up to my name as the guy who can dissect these fights down to the science and tell you Souza's going to win off of his back in the Dana White Contender Series, that's why he wasn't supposed to be the underdog, and he'll take the guys under 55, or this guy's the better boxer, or Michael Chandler's got one of the best, nicest, cleanest punches and throws the hook with all of his hips so beautifully that when he lands, it's like it's 10 times harder than your normal punch. And if our Chiesa is going to be the way better grappler and stronger guy, or the Tony Gravely versus the Grid is going to be, or Strickland is going to be so much better than Brandon Allen, or he should have been the favorite, or Jose Aldo is on a different level than Chito Vera, or Luke against Joseph Nathan Man. If I can't break down, I told you he was going to wrestle, and by the second round, he was going to find a way to beat. Like, I break it to a science, and it has nothing. Like, would you rather be the guy who their logic, if let's say their logic was good, the reason they go with those scenarios, and they pick fights based off of everything but the right things, is because they're incapable of it. So it's the second best thing. It's like exactly so they know that if they had the ability to, if they had my perspective, my knowledge, my abilities to do what I can do, and when I'm looking into the fights, they would rather go with that, because nobody's going to be able to convince me that if I had $100, would I rather bet it on something that's going to get me back $20 only, or would I rather bet $100 on something that's going to get me back $0 most likely? Because they admit to betting on the guy who's the rightful underdog. They're not saying the line is wide and the other guy should be the favorite. They're saying the line is wide and he should just be less of a favorite, or less of an underdog, I mean. So they're admitting that they're putting money on the guy who's supposed to lose. What kind of a concept is that? And so what's happened now is the odd makers, this is the enemy. The biggest, the Superman versus Lex Luthor, the Batman versus Joker, the biggest, the arch nemesis of a bookie is the handicapper. A handicapper's worst enemy is the bookie. You don't think that, because 99.9999% of the bookies are handicappers, I'm sorry, are doing that. They don't have unless they had fighting experience, and if they had fighting experience, the chances are they're not handicappers. They're either trainers, or they're still fighting, or they're like doing other stuff. And it's very rare that you actually see a handicapper that was a former fighter. It happens, but it's not as common. So that's why 99% of them, they have to go through alternative methods of choosing winners. And so that the next best thing, in their opinion, is by value. But that's so much different and so wrong and hurtful that people following them can really get hurt. They can lose a lot of money and never recover. So you guys are in the right channel, because let me explain to you, for example, okay, like there's worlds of difference. When somebody is rightfully the favorite, this is why I tell you the lines make no sense. Number one, the lines are being used as a way to deceive the bookies, deceive the handicappers, and also the bettor. The bettor is going to be more comfortable on a -600 than he would be on a -100 or a +100. For in this case, let's focus on one of the fights today, okay? He's the next one in line, so we're going in order. And the next video, we'll have the next fight after this fight. So that would be, let me just give you guys a heads up. Today's segment is going to be based on Beneil Dariush, the Assyrian, versus Beneil Dariush versus Diego Ferreira. And then after that, we're going to get into Timur Valov versus Julio Arce, which is another good one I can't wait to talk about, which is very similar to this one in a sense of value. But the reason why I'm really fixed on this fight especially is it's the perfect example of what I try to tell you is the guy, well, actually, he technically did open up as the favorite. So the odd makers didn't really try to fool people, because they opened him up as a favorite, but they didn't open him up, and they knew this would happen. They didn't want to be wrong and say like there's no reason for them to have not made him a favorite, but they made him such a small favorite that they knew the line would move him into being an underdog, which is what they want by the fight night. They want the casuals and the bettors that are waiting at the lines at the casinos, or they're just browsing around the bookie's website to say, hey, let's find a favorite, but one that pays very good, and let's get lucky, and let's put $1 million on him because he's the rightful favorite. Why would we assume? We don't want the -600 guy. We're not winning enough money. We want bang for our buck. This is an old school deceiving trick. They knew he was going to be moved into becoming a underdog, and that somebody's going to assume he was the rightful underdog and not do the research or not know who he is, because this guy has got the least for the top 10 division, and being a top 10 guy, out of the whole top 10, he's got the smallest following ever. And there's a reason for it. When he finished his knockout win against Scott Holtzman in the first round, one of the most impressive, they said it was less than 2 people in the entire history of the UFC. He was one of less than 3 people, 2 or 3 people, maybe even the only person actually, that ever executed a move like that. It was more unique and probably just as nice, if not nicer, than the Joaquin Buckley knockout. And mind you, it was his second one in a year. Back-to-back fights, he had a similar type of a knockout. So this guy's coming off such impressive. But after the fight was over, the media asked him something about like, so what pumps you up, or what music were you listening to on your way down that makes you like, because he did it so quickly in the first round, again and again and again. And I'm going to tell you why. It had nothing to do with music, because you know what he actually answered? I was listening to gospel Christian music. So he was talking about God and religious. He wasn't doing the Conor McGregor, cocky, arrogant stuff that gets you attention and makes you look like a badass. He didn't care about that. So he's not getting the attention that UFC wants their fighters to bring. And therefore, they're going to keep passing him up. But you know what? The people inside, like the cherry pickers, for example, Oliveira, he dropped out of the fight for good reason. They know who the real threats are. They know who the real badasses are, the real Kamzats of the organization are. The only reason why they can find him a fight now is because they found him somebody who is the closest to a top 10 ranked guy like they can get, or top 5, top 10 ranked guy, because it makes no sense for him to be fighting anybody else besides high ranking, because he's got as much of an impressive look. The guy who he was scheduled to fight, who's on just as much of an impressive run right now and win streak, is the guy who without even giving us a good reason, because he had no good reason besides I'm scared and I don't want to risk losing and going all the way back into the beginning of climbing back up to the top. Because Oliveira had no reason to drop out of the fight, and he dropped out of the fight because he knows this guy is one of the biggest threats of the division. If you're talking about skill for skill, heart for heart, fighting spirit, black belts, this guy was a black belt. He earned his black belt faster than anybody I've ever heard of earning black belts. Usually it takes like a certain amount of years to become. He earned his black belt faster than most people earn their blue belts, and he went undefeated in his beginning of his career for the longest time. And you know what? Until this present day, his only losses outside of the first 30 seconds of the Alexander Hernandez debut fight, where it was a guy nobody knew about, nobody had been able to study. It was his first fight, young guy, didn't have a long career. He was like 21 years old. So, and he just had power. He doesn't. 19 out of 20 times if they had fought, 19 out of 20 times, that would have never happened and Beneil would have won, but he got caught with a punch. It happens to Aldo in 13 seconds. It happens to the best of them. So there's no shame in that. But besides that, you could argue and say Beneil should be undefeated. His only losses were to people that he dominated the entire fight for 3 rounds or 2 rounds or the entire first, until the moment where he lost from like a flying knee, where he got the opponent timed it perfectly and he was going for a takedown and he did some like crazy like spinning or something, just very, very, it was a guy like Barboza. Barboza is known for that. He's famous for that. He's one of the best in the world because of that. So there's, again, no shame in it. But when we're talking about, forget what's on paper, forget like what technically happened at the end. If we're talking about like a street fight and you just had to grade it on who got his ass kicked for the longer amount of time, Beneil won those fights. He didn't get his ass whooped for 99% of the fight until that one moment. So that's different. It's not about technicalities. If we're talking about just skill for skill, he is one of the best, if not the best, in that division. Michael Chiesa is the guy who we just saw beat Magny to 10-8 rounds, 5 rounds in a row, got dominated by this guy. And he was a stronger version of him. So like, it's the heart. Let me explain. Do you remember how I tell you guys got to learn about the fighter before you bet on him? You got to know about their personality, about their everything. Let me teach you a little. This is the stuff I go above and beyond for the patrons only. I want you guys to be comfortable with your money. If, for example, I wouldn't blame you if you don't want to do all the parlays, because I got some very good parlays for this event. If you just have $1,000 and you want to double it, you want to get more than $2,000 back when you cash out, you have my blessings to put it all on Beneil Dariush. You're 100% safe. I'm going to break it down to many reasons, not just scientifically down to the science of how and why, but I'm going to get into even the other aspects from the outside of the organization matters. Like, how sometimes you got to focus on the skills, like this guy's match styles make matches. So I'm going to dissect this guy's style, that guy's style, his weaknesses, his strengths. When I do that, it's going to be all in the favor of making sense that Beneil would win 9 out of 10 times. So I'm just giving you a quick synopsis of what I'm going to do in the show later in case you don't have time. This is what I'm going to do. When I break it down to how and why, you're going to be able to comfortably say, okay, so you're right, I should bet on Beneil. But now, before we do that, before we get into the stuff that no other handicapper, I'm going to say this right now, guys, I'm the best handicapper you're ever going to know. I'm the best predictor you're ever going to know. Nobody can break down fights the way I can. Nobody can see them the way I can and then speak it and translate it and explain it the way I can, especially, and translate it into making money. So there's a reason why Michael Chiesa and Matt Schnell were my number 1 and number 2. On my best single bets, because I don't just factor in. What I take into consideration is who's the best paying. So I do what those handicappers do, but in the right way. I don't do it to bet on the guy who's going to lose. I do it in a sense of, okay, the guy who I'm one of the most sure about winning, the guy who's the rightful favorite, who should be the rightful favorite, who's got the more paths to victory, who's got the more advantages. Now let's take that. That's half of it. Literally, right down the middle, that's half. The other half is a value. So now let's say, for example, Nurmagomedov had been on that card as Chiesa, and he was fighting against that guy, what I told you was my fade of the week. Well, and some people even picked him to win and said that the lines were too wide or blah, 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 whatever. The reason he was in the last is because he also, I knew, was the rightful favorite and he was going to dominate and win, but he was a minus 600. So if I have two guys that I'm both 100% sure about winning, well, why would I even put the other guy, because he's a minus 600? He would be the last guy in my list of best bets, as opposed to everybody else's number 1 list of the best bets and their Koskis that they made on all of their parlays. So you got to have two things to be on my list of in order. Confident, I have to be 100% sure that you're going to win, that you're the rightful favorite, that you're not, I'm not betting on you for any other reasons. For that, that's the number 1 first half. The second half is value. Is there value in this? Is it, because now we know you're going to win it, but is it worth it? Because there are crazy things that can happen, disqualifications, robberies. So with those, if it's not a fair world, if it's not a perfect world, it has to be worth it. So I take that into consideration, and that's why as an underdog, Matt Schnell, and as an underdog, Chiesa, they were my number 1 and number 2s. And I told you to put the more money on, or depending on the list of the order. So if you listened to me off those alone, you would have been, but now here's number 1 when it comes to value and when it comes to confidence. There is 99, and let me explain to you why. When it comes to technique, like more crisp, more fluid, more precise, accurate, power. Okay, just let's go focus with that. Technique, styles, and like a guy who I would in MMA consider a black belt, or in boxing a black belt, or just striking. We're going to grade him on striking. Way better. There are levels to striking, and where Beneil Dariush is and where Diego Ferreira is, night and day. They're not even close. These guys would never be in the same ring at the same time. They're not, you would have to put this guy down levels and this guy up levels for them to even be, there's way many more levels in between. They're not even close. That's one aspect. One very important aspect. Number 2, styles. Beneil Dariush does his best when he's fighting against pressure fighters like Israel Adesanya, like so many others. The way that he was able to so quickly dispose of the guys he has the opposite trouble of, is the most trouble of, is the counter strikers, the ones who are patient, like Barboza, like Chiesa. So those guys are the ones that he has trouble with, but the ones that he doesn't have trouble with, especially a guy who's going to be so eager and anxious and emotional about trying to get the win because he was the first person to ever beat him, is, let's not forget that there's emotions coming into this fight. There's a big time, he's like the way Aldo was emotionally invested. Dustin Poirier said about in the first fight, I never hated anybody as much as I hate Conor McGregor. He said that in the interview for the first time that they fought, and he got knocked out. So many times we've seen, and I know this for a fact, if you're going into a fight emotional, you're not fighting at your best, it's a disadvantage. So forgetting that disadvantage, we already said the technical striking is big time in the favor of Beneil Dariush. The strength and the power behind his precision, so now accuracy and precision is in the favor of Beneil again. He's the more precise, he's the more accurate. That spinning thing that he did to Scott Holtzman was because Scott Holtzman was trying to back him up. And Diego is the same way. He tries to walk down his opponents. And it works on a lot. Remember I told you like Chito Vera against the lower level tier guys, he's the best of the lower level. Diego's the best of the lower level as well for that division, but there's levels. You can't do that to the guys who are higher level than you. It's going to cost you. The same way I said it was going to cost Joaquin Buckley. Like, the reason why that Joaquin Buckley thing happened is because Impa is green. He's a guy who just came up dating. He doesn't have experience enough to know. He made the same mistake that I told you was what Conor McGregor did, that I told you as soon as I saw him do it, I knew that he was lost. He didn't know and I put that notification out right away to the Patreon. I said, look, he's about to lose. Hurry up, or I just let you guys know the fight is over already, and that's because he started catching kicks. If you catch kicks, number one is defeating it's still doing the damage. Number two, all you're doing is hurting yourself more because now you have no hands to block and you have no hands to punch with. So it's the worst thing you could do. You're not only not doing any purpose, there's no purpose behind it that doesn't help you in any way, but it hurts you. So that's what that was a green move by Impa Kasagian. It was something that he paid for because of it. So it wasn't anything impressive that Buckley did. So to give him minus 300 over anybody else because of that, the recency bias was false. It was a false pretense. And that's why I made a post about it on even Twitter and everywhere else. I said, don't get fooled. Don't let them pull the wool over your eyes. It's not who you think he is. He hasn't won a decision since 2017. It was a split decision against a guy who's never even been in the UFC with a 9-4 record. Like, I broke it down to a science that this guy is very bad at decisions because of this reason and that reason. So that's another thing. Example why I'm showing you here. These guys are perfect matches for each other in a sense of making fireworks happen. Remember I told you UFC's got a model right now. They're trying to make fights that are designed to make something fun and crazy happen, like the Buckley knockout. And why do you think Beneil keeps coming off of back-to-back first round knockouts? They know what they're doing. They know who's got the, remember, they back up the people who they see a future with. Beneil has a future in that division. Whether they want him to climb up the rankings or not, it's going to be inevitable. He's going to get past these people whether they like it or not, so they might as well get behind him. So they're giving him a guy he's already beat before. They're giving him a guy who they know is going to be emotionally too invested. And they're giving him a guy who falls perfectly into the hands of how he fights. Now, through the help of a guy, Rafael Cordero, one of the greatest minds of MMA. This guy, man, let me remind you, Mike Tyson, one of the most financially wealthy people. He's got shows. He's got his own like dispensary for weed and edibles, and he's got like podcast, and he's got a bunch of fighters under him and TV shows. He picked of all the people in the world he could have picked to help him fight against Roy Jones and train him to get back into fighting, Rafael Cordero. Martin Vettori, the guy who we've seen make some of the biggest improvements. He looked better than ever. He was always a good fighter, but the way we've seen him look in his most recent fight and the stuff that I was listening to, I don't know if you remember what I was saying. I was like, man, this is straight out of a Rocky movie. It was so inspirational that Martin Vettori wasn't even sitting down on his stool in between the rounds. He was so pumped and geeked because Rafael Cordero knows how to keep his fighters on their feet, on their toes. He knows how to motivate them. He knows how to, he's such a great trainer, guys. I picked up, I'm a trainer. I used to train. I've been trained by my trainer was a former heavyweight champion of the world. So I've been trained by the best of them, and I've trained some of the best of them. So I know, I recognize a good one when I see one. This guy's the best, man. He's gonna go down as one of the best in the world, top 2, top 3 of all of time, if not number 1. He's one of the best trainers I've ever seen. So, and Beneil, there's a reason why Diego has been bouncing around. He just moved to Fortis. When you see a guy going from one gym to another gym, Buckley, for example, there's a problem with that guy. Nobody's taking him serious. He's not getting the attention that he needs. Nobody sees a future in him. Nobody likes him. There's a lot of reasons, and they're usually not good. So you have to pay attention to these outside the ring circumstances, okay? I told you, it's not just about inside the ring. I'm going to give you every reason that there is possible to want to bet on somebody from the outside. This is why other radio shows, other talk shows, Pub Sports Radio, for example, DFS Brady, Brady, if you look at my comment section, he's been doing it for longer than me. He's got 15,000. I've never even done this on his show. He came to my show and made a comment saying, "Great video, Parlay King." Pub Sports Video said, "Great, we want you on our show." They invited me on their show. Another guy, if I just show you just comments from other people inviting me to help them with their shows or just giving me compliments, and I do what they're my competitors in a sense, you would not believe that I've only been doing this for 2 months and they've been doing it for a year. But there's a reason, guys. There's levels to everything. I'm telling you now, I'm the best handicapper to ever lived and will ever live. I do it differently and the right way. I'm teaching these people, if anybody who's smart and wants to do things the right way, they would listen. But here's the problem. This is where we have to, this is why sometimes it gets frustrating, and they'll make lies and try to deny that I'm the best and talk, because there's stuff that I do that you can't teach. You just have to have had that knowledge and experience firsthand and studied it or performed it or lived it to be able to see it. So there's stuff that I pick up on. The stuff like where they say Felipe's the best boxer in the world. He did such great boxing, but then I told you that guy was one of the worst boxers ever, and then you saw the next fight he was using the referee kept having to stop the fight and warn him to take away points because he wasn't closing his fist. And like I told you, the most basic boxing stuff, he lacked the knowledge of the basics in 101 of boxing. He didn't know how to throw. But then I told you, somebody who does throw beautifully, he does one of the nicest punches ever, gets a knockout in the first round against the guy who's never been knocked out, pretty much. A hooker got knocked out like in a way nobody's ever, because I told you in my post, look at it. What did I tell you? I said one of the nicest punchers I've ever seen. And then a week later, after the fight was over, everybody else is on the train. Teddy Atlas is making posts about what a beautiful punch. He's got such a, before that, everybody was on the, he's got a 9-inch reach advantage, hookers, UFC caliber. This guy's from Bellator. Bellator is going to be a Ben Askren, and everybody was on that, but I knew what time it was. I knew it was just I didn't think he was going to finish him that fast, because I know Hooker's a durable guy. So the only thing I was wrong about is how quickly he was going to finish him. But now I think about it, he's on the big stage. He's been trying to get into UFC for so long that it doesn't surprise me that he went above and beyond his normal pace. Usually he wouldn't perform that good because he was on just a Bellator stage, but now on UFC as his first fight, it makes I feel stupid about not thinking he should have done that quicker and that it wouldn't have happened so quickly. So that was my mistake. I admit I should have thought that it was going to happen sooner than it did, or than I thought it did. So that, but I knew what was going to happen. I knew that he was going to hurt him really badly and win the fight. I just didn't think it was going to be that fast. Anyways. So Beneil, in every aspect, he's the best at when it comes to pressure fighters. Look, I've never seen somebody throw. For example, that guy he had fought against was on a 10. Let's go back from 2017 when he started making a name for himself. After his he had beat a guy who was like Rashid Magomedov. Rashid Magomedov was a former M1 global champion. Okay, this guy was a champion, one of the most highest level fighters ever in M1 global. He had 2 successful title defenses. He's one of those Dagestanian combo sambo champions. He had, out of 30 fights, he's got like 10 by knockout, and he's like a decision machine too. He never loses decisions. At the time when Beneil had beat him, he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was on like a 14 fight win streak, and the guy he had beat right before fighting Beneil was Gilbert Burns. None other than, so look how high he just finished beating Gilbert by unanimous decision in Gilbert's hometown in Brazil. He beat Gilbert unanimous decision. The next fight, so that was like number 13 in a row, he fought Beneil. Beneil dominated him. 3 rounds, all 3 rounds unanimous decision win against the guy who's got 13 decision wins. So then after that, what does Beneil do? Beneil fights a guy like, who's the next one? I think it was, Bobby Green. He was scheduled to fight Bobby Green, but Bobby Green dropped out for one reason or another. Though it's not a surprise. Another guy who didn't want to fight him. After that, Dunham, guys. Evan Dunham was a guy at the time, man. He was big. He's beat some of the best of the best. Let's see, Evan Dunham. He just at that time he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4. He was on a 5-fight win streak. He had beat like Rick Glenn. He was promising for a while, but then now he's on a downhill. But at the time he was on a 5-fight win streak. Who else did he fight? So yeah, he beat Thiago Moises in a decision. Thiago, seeing what he did, even in the Bobby Green fight where he looked like he was losing, he's good at decisions. He won a decision against Thiago Moises, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what happened in the Thiago Moises fight. It doesn't matter, anyways. But so yeah, if we look back, he beat Camacho. He's beat some pretty good names. Dober was on a very good win streak as well. Drew Dober, he annihilated Dober like in the second round, if I'm not mistaken. So let's see. Yeah, so he beat Thiago Moises in a decision. After that, he beat Drew Dober, who was on a very big win streak. He was the first guy to take that away from him. Then Drakkar Klose in what was one of the performance of the night bonuses he got, I think, or fight of the night or performance of the night bonuses that he earned him, one of the nicest knockouts ever. And then a first round, within 30 seconds of the first round, he disposed of Holtzman in some of the most impressive fashion. If you want to go look at that knockout, if you haven't seen it, it's such a beautiful knockout. So anyways, every advantage is going in the favor. I've never really been high on anybody coming out of Fortis MMA. Look at how Bevan Lewis kind of was a letdown against Trevin Giles. He performed very badly, and it was a lot to do with coaching. It was bad coaching, bad game plan. Uriah Hall almost lost to Silva on his retirement fight, the last fight. He lost like 2 rounds to Silva. So a lot of reasons I'm not high on Fortis MMA compared to where Rafael Cordero's killers are training out of, especially. That's another advantage. So there's just too many advantages, guys. You have my blessings. If you want to put $1,000, go get a loan and just put all your money on this fight. Go ahead. You got my blessings. He's going to win. He's going to be in some parlays. So if you want to save some money, I got some nice parlays for us. But for a lot of reasons, guys, you got my blessings. And I'm telling you that you're on the right channel. You don't want to, with all due respect to the other handicappers, I hope you don't take offense to this because it's a private segment. It's supposed to be a private segment just for my patrons only. But, you know, there's, and like other guys, like I told you, even if we're wrong, I may not be right 100% of the time, but I'm always going to give you the smarter play. So like the guys who are right when I'm wrong, they're not right for the right reasons. And in the long run, when it's all said and done, at the end, when we have to add up our winning and add up our accuracy, they're never going to be better than me. Yeah, sure, they'll get one in a blue moon right when I got it wrong, but in the majority of it, the big picture, the long run, it's not even close. I challenge you to find me anybody who would be, remember, look at my older episodes. I challenged everybody. I said, any handicapper that wants to go one-on-one with me, and like, we'll go pick a card with like 15 fights, and we'll say just winner or loser. Forget about, or I can challenge them to do it with money. Whoever has $300, we'll pretend like it's a $300. Who can make the most money out of $300? I guarantee you, my parlays, I've hit parlays 90-1 odds, back to back to back to back. So I don't think anybody could do what I could do. I can live up to being the parlay king, the single bet king. I used to have the nickname the prop bet master. When I told people what my prop bet rates were, they didn't believe me. You guys have seen, I've made out of 15 for the Hermanson event, 15 props, 13 hit. Who has pops that 13 plus money prop bets? I mean, so anywhere, and there's a reason, because I know I don't just guess, and I don't pick fights for the wrong reasons. The best way to pick and predict fights is the way I do it, and nobody can do it as good as I could do it. So thank you guys for following me. Thank you for supporting me. I'm looking forward to giving you my full attention. I'm transitioned to full time now. I appreciate you guys hanging on until I could do this, because I know in the beginning it was a little bit bumpy. I didn't have the time to do as much of a research as I'm doing now and be able to give as much content. So thank you for riding through the hurdles that we had to go through to get here. But we are finally here. As long as everybody stays here and we keep growing, especially, I give you my word, we're going to be the most profitable, best team in the world. You guys will be able to retire young and sexy. Just please remember, save your money. When we win, if you bet $1,000 a week, 1 week you're gonna win like 6,000, right? Don't put the next week all 6,000 back. I mean, yeah, sure, it could probably make you wait, because we're never gonna lose money, but I need you to start to save it up so that you can see the fruits of our labor and you can see the results. I need you to start putting it to the side, and then there'll be opportunities where, like, I'll say, hey, look, this Beneil guy or this guy, this is a mismatch. This is an easy, a trustable, worthy guy. Oh yeah, I was trying to tell you something about Beneil. Beneil is, if you see that flag he wears around his back, there's a reason why there's nobody else in the organization that has that flag. You see Mexican flags, you see Georgian flags, Iraqi flags. There's a lot of like rare flags, but he's got the most rare flag in the world. You know why? He comes from a dying breed. That culture, that nationality, that flag he wears, it's called Assyrian. Don't confuse it for Syria. Syria is the exact same spelling and pronunciation as Assyria. The only difference is there's an A in front of it. So the ASS, if you guys want to research it yourself, it's spelled ASSYRIAN, not to be confused with with SYRIA. That's a whole different nationality, whole different region, a whole different religion. Language is different, but it sounds very similar. Assyrians used to be in charge of they were the biggest war, the 300, like that movie Spartan 300, how they took 300 people to go fight. Those Assyrians they lost their country because they were the most feared, most powerful people, or I don't know how to say it, land or whatever. Like the king of Assyria, the rulers, the land was the most richest, until this present day, there have been wars over that land, where the new Assyria used to be its own country and they lost it because they got taken over. People tried to attack them because the thing that they lacked was numbers. They were very, very, until today, you'll know when I explain to you where their region is. This is why research is important, you guys. I always tell you the Brazilians are resilient, the Mexicans got fighting spirit. Like, you got to learn about people. So Assyrians, if you guys have probably never even heard of them, I'll tell you their whole history. This is how research pays off, guys. Assyrians were known as the best in the world for war. They had the best warriors, the fighters, their spirit. They lacked in numbers, so they took over their land. Their land is where current day is where George Bush made up an excuse to invade Iraq because of their land, their oil, they're rich. They have gold. Their gold and oil, which is liquid gold, makes it the most valuable land in the world. So because of that, George Bush made up an excuse of weapons of mass destruction that they never found and there never was, just to have an excuse to go to war and invade their land and take over and be able to do what they needed to do to make money, especially with the private businesses that the Bushes owned. If you look at the businesses that they were investing in and that they had stocks in and everything, the oil industries and stuff, and other stuff, there's a lot to it. We don't have to get into it. But the point is, it benefited him in his private businesses to go to war, and also the country was going to benefit from it as well. So that's why they took Saddam Hussein out of power. Well, Saddam Hussein was the ruler of Iraq. Iraq is the present day Assyria. Before Iraq was born and before Iraq was what it is, it used to be Assyria. Assyria was very small, just like Iraq is. It's a tiny little speck on the dot. And it used to be run by the people, the ancestors of where Beneil Dariush is from. And those people were the richest, most powerful people in the world. They said that there was at a point where the leader was so strong, he had been feared and respected by the Middle East so much, like he couldn't be challenged by anybody. Like, it was just, Assyria was the strongest nation of all time. It was the Spartans of the era, you know. So he comes from a very warrior mentality. They have very much warrior spirits, and they're just very, very driven and good fighting spirit. Very similar to like the Georgians. The you know, they're just one of those. That's another thing that's why he fights. You notice when he gets hurt in his fights, in that Drakkar fight, he was really hurt badly. He fought better. He came back. He didn't do a Jordan Wright and ball up, and which sometimes this guy will do, by the way. His opponent does not handle adversity well. When he gets hurt, he gets desperate. He shoots in, like he handles it very sloppy, as opposed to this guy. So for a million reasons, he should be the rightful favorite like he used to be, but a bigger favorite. They're not giving him the credit he deserves. If you guys were smart, you would take advantage of the lines. They're never going to be this good again. He should be a huge favorite, not a slight favorite, not a moderate favorite. He is the rightful huge favorite in this fight, but right now they got him as an underdog. So slam that bad boy down, milk it for as much as you can, because there's no chance he loses this fight. I don't even see outside of it, because if you think about how he's been knocked out, Beneil, it was one of the most devastating types of ways possible. It was the equivalent of being hit with a baseball bat. Even worse. It wasn't a punch, it wasn't an elbow, it wasn't a kick, it was a knee, a flying knee right on the middle. It was where both of them, it was like a chicken fight where they both run into each other at the same time, because he was going down. It was like that thing that cracked Chris Weidman's skull and never made him the same again after that, from Yoel Romero. That was the type of thing that it took to knock Beneil out, or just a clean punch from Alex Hernandez, a 21-year-old bulldog. Guy's got, if nothing else, one of his best attributes is his power. 20-some years old, and it was a perfect clean shot. It wasn't like a skinny, scrawny kid with no, there's no shame. That was the only time he's ever been knocked out by a punch. So I don't think Diego possesses that type of power. He's more of an accumulation type of a threat, and an accumulation, he's not going to win that fight against Beneil Dariush, guys. Beneil's, let's see if I'm not mistaken, Beneil Dariush's statistics here are showing me, okay, Fierro is about 5-3, and Beneil is about 4-2-3. So they're very close, but here's the thing: the takedown average and takedown defense. Takedown defense is for Beneil 80%, and his takedown average is super, super high. So that's why in their first fight he dominated him in control time. This guy's control time in his fights are unheard of. The number of minutes that he uses to control people, including Fierro in their first fight. The first time when he lost to Beneil, he was controlled by Beneil for a huge portion of the fight. He was not even close. So I don't see anything different this time around. It's not like one of them got weaker and other. If anything, the father time is more in the favor of Beneil Dariush, because Beneil Dariush is the younger guy, the stronger guy, the longer guy. Every reason, the stance is more convenient for him. He's fighting in a stance that's gonna be better in his favor for the types of counter striking that he's good at doing. It's gonna be in his favor. So everything works in his favor, guys. I can't say it any more better than I already have. If you have any problems or questions with it, with me, you can feel free to go against me, and I'll have to say I told you so later on. Thank you, guys. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, even if it's a private video. I would appreciate it anyways. It shows me you guys have paid attention. Make some comments if you could. I may end up, just for this video, because I spoke a lot about the difference between me and the other handicappers, to let you guys know what we do different, because I've had a lot of people, try to drag my name in the dirt and say I'm not good, I'm a fraud, I'm this or that. So I wanted to make it known why I'm right when I'm right, and what I do when I'm doing what I'm doing. The research, how can you call somebody a fraud when he does long, hard hours of research, and his accuracy rate and his tickets are proving that he makes money and he knows facts. Everything I say is facts. It's majority of it is facts from other facts that I have had to put together to make facts that nobody knows. So just because it's a fact that you couldn't find out yourself or conclude, and you couldn't come up with it, doesn't make it fraud. I mean, come on, man. Put some respect on my name. You're gonna have to do it one day or one way or another, because time will tell who's the real guy who knows his stuff and who's the guy who doesn't. Thank you guys for your time. Don't forget to slam the button, to slam the underdog right now, because there's no telling if he'll stay as an underdog if somebody puts a lot of money in direction of Beneil after watching this video, let's say, or whatever happens, and you don't want to lose it. So the last time I bet on Beneil, I had bet on him $1,800, one of the biggest single bets that I made, but it was in increments of 400, 400, like 300 and 4. Like I did it in 4 different, because I kept having to slam it. I didn't want to risk a chance of, because this is the story of his career. Every time he fights, he comes in as a small favorite, turns into an underdog, or just into a smaller favorite. The money is always going against him for some reason. I don't know why. They don't learn their lessons. So we'll take advantage of it. Even though he's on a 6-fight win streak, people are pulling out. They don't want to fight against him. They still think for some reason he's not deserving of being the huge rightful favorite. They rather make other people the favorites, that, you know, the Buckleys because of one highlight reel kick, or Koski's because I don't know what else reasons they wanted. But we're smarter than that. We know what we're doing, so we'll take advantage of it. Thank you guys. See you on the next segment. I'm coming out with 2 or 3 of them per day. We're going to get ahead of the movements, the line movements. So by tomorrow, I'll be all the way up until the fight with Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. We have a lot to talk about. I'm going to give you a clue. It's got to do with the game plan. Usman is not going to be able to do what he did to Jorge Masvidal when he was in trouble on the feet, because the better guy on the ground, although Usman is a better wrestler, he's not going to be the better ground game specialist. So that's a big factor. So listen up for the breakdown. I'm going to tell you guys a lot about the Israel Adesanya fight. We're going to talk a lot about those fights tomorrow in private segments. Thank you for being in the Patreon, where you guys get all those videos for the private patrons only.